let's really discuss this right now, because we know there's a clear-cut picture of what could make the WNBA actually popular. And that is Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever becoming really good and playing deep into the playoffs. And if you got a playoff series with her versus Angel Reese, that would register with people. It's not going to be major top 3 sport in America level big, but we know that it's already bigger than it's ever been. And boy, that is the map. Right now, if we're putting out the blueprint for how to make the WNBA something, that would be it. What is that thing for the NBA right now? Because in the last 2 years, everyone has shown by not watching the games that they do not care about European superstars. Luka gets to his first NBA Finals. Does not matter for ratings. Joker, a year ago, the Nuggets go on that great run. Does not matter for NBA ratings. Outside of New England, no one cares about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They care about the Boston Celtics, but they really don't care about those two. Who is the superstar that people would actually get behind to watch? There's no Tiger Woods looming out there that's going to give ratings this big boost that's going to happen the way it did in golf. There's no Michael Jordan in the game right now. Bronny James averaged a little over 4 points per game for the last place team in the Pac-12 in his 1 year. He's not a superstar in the waiting. Victor Wembanyama, to me, is another European player that American audiences aren't going to get behind and support by watching or caring about if he becomes a superstar of the San Antonio Spurs. I'm having a hard time figuring out how the NBA gets out of this hole they're in right now.
Yeah, the NBA, I mean, it's a league built on individual brands that come through town, and you want to go see that star.
Player.
You want to go see that one star play against your team, right? That cycles through your city. And maybe they play. Maybe they play. And then the rules had to change based on rest, right?
But there's not right now, to me, that one player or one team or one rivalry that's going to get it going. In the 80s, it was Bird versus Magic that brought people to the NBA. Really, I would say that was when the NBA became mainstream, was the 1980s with those two. Then, of course, it was Jordan. And now I look around and I think, what's going to happen? Like, what is the thing? What is the Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese thing that the NBA can capture to win back American audiences? Hutton, I don't see it currently in the league.
Well, you can have it, but you need the antagonist to win. You know, what was that last year with the Memphis Grizzlies going against Draymond and the Warriors?
But who even is the antagonist that America is going to tune in to watch?
Well, you have to have that antagonist continue to win to be relevant.
And that's the question I'm asking, though. Like, who would be the ideal antagonist for the league to get the national audience back the way they had it before? Well, there's no bad guy. There's no hero right now in the NBA.
And the problem is they all team up with each other before it's all said and done, right?
Yeah.
And what might be trash talk in one season, you have the Warriors clamoring to trade for LeBron by the trade deadline. You know, like it's just not the same vibe as the era you're referencing. But that could not happen right now because everyone's cool.
Yeah, anyone that I would say, okay, this is like phenom status of young players, they're all foreign born, and we've seen time and time again that does not work with American audiences.
But he's got to have that.
But then I think are the Minnesota Timberwolves going to register with Anthony Edwards? Can he be that Michael Jordan, LeBron James level star? I don't know.
It was going to be set up on a silver platter for Ja Morant. That's the guy.
Could have been.
He had just signed that shoe deal. Could have been. And he was headed towards that status because the Grizzlies were right there.
But he can't stop posing with handguns.
Right. But so it was crippling for not just his individual possibility, but for that franchise. And then you have again, small market. I'm just comparing Memphis to what we see with Minnesota. It's possible there. We saw what the relevant Timberwolves were with Kevin Garnett. You know, they were on national TV because of Garnett. So is it possible? Absolutely. The biggest league in the world with the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs are on top of the mountain there, and they've stayed there because of a player. You just have to have the guy that goes and grabs it and that takes down everyone on their way, and consistently, instead of just the stepping stone aspect. The Warriors did that, Chad. They built that roster organically. We haven't seen that since. I mean, we've seen the Celtics and what they've accomplished, but it's not the same storyline. Not the same vibe. And that's unfortunate for the league. Let me also say, too, the league doesn't view it as a bad thing because they're about to bounce from $2.7 billion annually to an estimated $7 billion in media rights. And it's just because of perfect timing with everything going on and with the fact that they've set up negotiations in a window where there's not many other sports properties that are going to be available for several years to come if you start to look on the horizon of everything. I mean, the UFC's coming up, and that's pretty much it. Everybody's locked up. So if you want a premium brand that doesn't draw nearly to the amount that football does, but draws better than what might also be available for you that you can't lose out on, that you can sell advertising for, it's this. And people, networks are lining up to negotiate and pay for it because if you don't get the NBA this go-around, you're not going to have very many options moving forward. Baseball's going to be locked up with whatever they're up to. You've got the, of course, with the NHL, they've just restructured what they're doing. We know the NFL is locked up for another 9 or 10 years. There's not much left.
No.
College football, locked up. We know where the SEC is going to be playing for decades, for a decade or so. You know where the college football playoff's going to be locked up. If you don't get the NBA, you're not a part of this. You're not a part of live sports that are relevant. Go grab cricket if you want. The UFC's available. Again, that's it. So that's why the money is so high and why they're going to skyrocket and why the WNBA stuck with the NBA in these negotiations this go around. Because they're not, the headlines right now are they're $50 million. They're going to lose $50 million this upcoming year. It'll be the last time you see them in the negative. This year will be the last time you see them in the negative.
I just posed this, and I hope you're right with that, by the way, Hud. Now, I just posed this question on my own X account at the Chad Withrow, and I'd be curious to hear people's answers on this. We're currently posing this question on air. What is the Caitlin Clark for the NBA? The player or rivalry that can actually get the American audience back watching their product? And I really can't point to one thing and say this is it.
It cannot be in the NBA. You have to follow that storyline all the way through. Like it's got to start in college.
No, that's what I'm saying. But that could be the answer. Someone can tell me it's this player in college and this happening. Because I don't want to sound fatalistic. Because you're going to get a lot of people who are like, the NBA is dead forever. They'll never recover. I don't believe that to be true. Things tend to cycle through and things change. But I cannot currently forecast or say, in 2003, Hutton, we could have easily said, right, the NBA was at a low point. Michael Jordan was on his way out with the Wizards, retiring. Who's going to be the next star? We could point to a Sports Illustrated cover that says the chosen one, and it's LeBron James in high school at St. Vincent St. Mary and say, oh, when this guy matures, he is going to be the next Michael Jordan.
And Kobe's already doing it.
He can carry the league. Kobe Bryant's in the league. That's right. The Lakers brand with Kobe Bryant at the time. That's going to be big. We just had an NBA Finals with one of the 50% of the two biggest brands in all of basketball participate in it. And we saw the worst ever Game 4 rating. And we're seeing some of the worst ratings in NBA Finals history. I don't want to sound like this is death of the NBA, but I cannot honestly come up with a scenario right now that I see right in front of me that shows the way out for the NBA to get back a large percentage of the American audience. Now, this person may be, dribbling a basketball right now in a driveway or on a playground, and he's 14 years old, and he's going to be the next big thing, and we're not talking about him yet. But I can't see it right now with any young player in the league or any team, or even as we saw with the Celtics, any one brand that can save it.
Well, the only thing that saves it right now are just the media partners. Because while they're not where they were by any stretch of the imagination, they're pulling, $9 million for the lamest NBA Finals we've seen. So, but here's the list.
And again, I'm not talking about this is not a balance sheet that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about how much everyone's going to pay them and all that. I'm strictly discussing.
They're worse, but getting paid more is what I'm saying.
Yeah, how does the NBA, in the 1990s, the NBA was every bit as popular as the NFL. I'm not asking them to be as popular as the NFL. But how does the NBA get back to a status where it is a clear-cut second biggest thing in this country behind football? Clear-cut right behind the NFL. What is that catalyst that's going to cause that the way Caitlin Clark has caused a huge rush in interest in women's basketball?
Well,
I don't see it right now.
And I don't think they're necessarily just focused on the U.S. You know, they're focused. They've been the global brand with their popularity in other countries. And they're looking at just the NBA package in the United States alone at $76 billion over the course of this, what they're negotiating.
Yeah, and
again, they're not looking at it the way our fandom and our childhood growing up and what we loved about the NBA. They're not looking at it through that lens whatsoever. And that's unfortunate because it's the product that we tune in for. But there's still a higher number of people tuning in for the NBA than any other option that they have right now. If you're a media company, if you want to be in sports, you know that the ACC's locked up through 2036, for instance. Like there's not a lot out there anymore. You're much further down the food chain at this point if you lose out on the NBA. So you have to pay the premium price if you want in, and you're at least getting $10 million for an NBA Finals that no one was wanting to watch in the first place. It's bizarre. The marketing of it is much better than Major League Baseball, though. Far better in terms of just the individual status. And you have those guys game in and game out putting up the types of points you want. I don't know if it's the quality of basketball you want to watch, but they're mixed in with a European style that globally attracts a much larger audience than maybe we're giving it credit for. I don't pretend to know what Giannis pulls in internationally, but I mean, they're viewing it from what they're selling across the globe. They have to be, Chad, because on paper, through just our common sense reaction to it, it's not something we weren't even discussing if we were at the bar yesterday. You know what I'm saying?
I'm looking at this very simplistically. I really want the NBA to get to a point where I can care about it again and where the majority of sports fans in America care. I get that they do business with China and make, probably billions off of them, and they do business in Europe and they do all that. I'm talking strictly from an American standpoint and not about the money they're making, because they're making money. So financially they are solvent and they're doing fine. But when I see these television ratings and I see them dip below 10 million for a Game 4 and hit rock bottom with the Boston Celtics involved in the NBA Finals, which is crazy to me, then I just sit back and think, what's going to get me and a majority of sports, not everyone, but a majority of American sports fans back interested in the NBA, tuning in? I wish I had a clear-cut blueprint for that. And people are going to come back and say, well, they need to be less woke or they need to do this. I haven't seen a lot of woke things from the league itself. Now, if you want to say LeBron James needs to shut his mouth or whatever, whatever. If you're saying the biggest star in the league needs to do that, then they've divided people and all of that, okay. But I think they've gotten away from a lot of that, and I think their silence on certain things is probably admitted. Maybe we don't need to always wade in these waters if we want the American audience and want as many people watching the sport as possible. So I don't see that as the solution either. And I think that's going to be a response.
And it was the finals that didn't feature LeBron, to what you're saying. Right. But here's the other thing.
My point is, if someone's not going to watch the NBA because LeBron James said a certain statement or said something, and now they're not going to watch anything across the NBA, I don't know that there's anything to pull that fan back. Right? Well, so I'm not as concerned about that if I'm the NBA.
The NBA, though, they are not a Caitlin Clark away from doing what you're expecting because they're already established. We've seen them at their pinnacle. The WNBA was irrelevant. And quite frankly, in my eyes, still is, because it's just one individual. I'm not tuning into the product. The WNBA Finals is not going to be enhanced by Caitlin Clark because she's not going to be playing in the WNBA Finals. So it's not one player through college even. It's got to be. It's a collective overall product that will lift this.
I don't know that they'll ever get back to 90s level where they're competing with the NFL. But how do they get back to half of that? 3/4
well,
of that
just
to
the
that
average.
level.
It's like the average fan in a non-market tuning into the stars and wanting to dive into the storylines of said teams, right? Listing a roster.
2008 Lakers Celtics would be a good example to me where everyone that's a sports fan was rooting for those two teams on a collision course with Kobe Bryant and the Lakers, and then Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen and that great Celtics team. And, man, we get Lakers-Celtics aughts edition and not in the 80s. And everyone wanted that because it was a return to that big rivalry. And those two teams with those jerseys together on the court in the NBA Finals was really cool, and it brought in a national audience.
Well, and then
we knew what it took then. If we saw that blueprint out in front of us and said, if this happens, it's going to get gigantic TV ratings, and it did.
And then you had.
I don't even know if that would do that now.
What did Golden State Cleveland pull in 2018? 2017, 2018.
I would say that was pretty good.
You had the Warriors going for their titles against LeBron.
And LeBron's return to his
Cleveland,
hometown.
Going for the title. Like that. That's the last time we tuned in for the storyline on the court for both teams. And, that was organic. Maybe set up by LeBron, but the Warriors roster, totally organic. And then you had the one individual that everyone was clamoring to watch, either because they loved or hated him, and it was LeBron James. And maybe at that point, not even to the hatred status by him.
I'm looking at it now. The one thing that pops up was Game 2 of that NBA Finals.
Well, it really was It was 2016 as well, Chad.
Yeah,
it was a triple. They met for 3 straight seasons.
Viewership was peaking during those games at about 24 million people. There were less than 10.
They had 9.
It was peaking around 10. So less than half of that audience for this latest NBA Finals.
Yeah, it's made a turn. And to think, like, if we said, when the media rights deal is up while we're saying this in Golden State Cleveland era, while they're battling for titles and Golden State's winning 3 out of 4 or something. They're going to make $76 billion on their next TV. It would be astronomical at that point, but you're still thinking, man, they're trending in the right direction. And then to say it now, it's like, they're going to make what? They're going to go how much higher? But if in the grand scheme of things, we'll look back on this deal and we're going to think one of two things. Either it continues to trend down, or, man, what a bargain. And the only way they do that, Chad, is if they flip the way that they're storytelling this. Because we don't know much about anything.
Yeah.
We know individual players, and that's it. We
Let's
don't know the story of why they're there.
Let's get back to Warriors Cavs that season even. Let's return to that in some way. But it's going to take I think people may think this is too simple. I think it's going to take an American superstar on the right team with the right rival that's going to make it happen. And you're right. I mean, what Caitlin Clark has done for the WNBA is spectacular. They're not in the same universe as the NBA or other established leagues, even with that boost in ratings and everything. And I don't think anybody's asking for that to happen.
But you still need the
can you get that catalyst?
Yeah.
That is a Caitlin Clark into the NBA, and who is that person? I don't think we know who that person is right now.
Yeah, I mean, the game has passed. I mean, look at all the college stars and where they are in the mock draft.
Jason Tatum is a great player on a historic, great franchise that now owns more NBA titles than any other franchise in the league. How many Americans truly care about Jason Tatum winning his first NBA title?
Dude, in a year where Bill Walton passed away.
They've got the Walton.
You know what I'm saying?
They got the Walton brand, on their jerseys too. And that's no disrespect to Jason Tatum or anything he's about. I don't think people really care.